What was that?
That was the title sequence.
Right, okay. Was that a reference to an old video game?
Yeah, cannon fodder.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. I just wondered if it was a bit too niche for this production, maybe.
Yeah, it's a bit niche, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll get rid of it. We've been a band for 6 years now, and you're probably wondering how we started our careers in music. Well, tonight in this documentary, we're going to look back at all the people that have influenced us and helped us along the way to become the band we are
Robot
today.
I feel this needs like a big intro.
I could do my impression of Jules Holland, because we've got the bands coming out. We're going to show clips of the bands. I could introduce them as Jules Holland. I can do my impression.
Just a bit niche.
Welcome to Tonight with Jules Holland. That's me, live in the studio here for We Are Robot TV. Well, tonight we have the bands, the likes of We Are Robot and Jasper Trap and Cocan Jack we have. And of course, Livewire. Yes, here we go. It's going to be an extravaganza of music this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Stick around. Coming up, we're going to be interviewing the likes of Nicholas Surtees, Johnny Vernon, Christopher Maynard, Nathan Kay, Lee Maycock, Jim Bryan, Vijay Armanani, and many, many more. So we're going to look at this chronologically. So if we get yourself a timeline like that, or should we have it that way?
I think the best thing to do is to go back to some of our early childhood, and specifically with Chris Ralph.
I think my uncle gave me an acoustic guitar when I was about 10 or 11. Went in the cupboard for 3 years.
So I started playing guitar probably when I was about 12. I knew Chris Ralph ever since I was born. So at that time I started taking acoustic guitars around to his house, sort of like messing around, playing songs in his lounge. The first formation of the band was then when Ralph kind of reached out to Rich Chick. Together the three of us would sort of jam, and then I think that's when we met Kev at school as well and realised he was a drummer. We never really had a singer, so we auditioned several different singers. Cy Farrell, we had Nathan Kessel, Jack Halligan. Kev turned to me and said, well, you can kind of hold a tune. Why don't you sing for us? I thought, well, I'll give it a go. So we got invited to do the Leavers Ball party.
Oh, we had helicopters last year.
Blimey,
we had
helicopters.
ambulances, tanks.
So did people pay to arrive in ambulances, or did they get themselves injured and then dropped off?
What do you think?
I mean, I was singing, I was doing a bit of backing vocals, singing the odd song as well. At Green Day, I think I did Hitchin' a Rhyme, maybe I was singing.
I hadn't really heard them that much before they played the Leavers Ball. I was actually impressed at how good they were.
Got a collection of songs together that we thought, let's record this acoustically.
I was very interested in the technical side of things. I borrowed a boom pole microphone from college.
Paul uses VHS player to record. I just don't know what that's about.
There was no audio equipment at the time, so the highest quality sound recording equipment I had was a video recorder, VCR.
We recorded an album called Chris Squared. Or was that the band? Was the band Chris Squared or was it?
No, the album.
The album was Chris Squared.
Yeah. Very clever title, because there's two Chris's, you see, so it's Chris Squared, you get it?
Who was the band that they used to listen to? His mate, wasn't it?
Johnny Vernon's band.
Yeah, and they were like, looked up to them, didn't they?
Coming down and I know it myself, 'cause
I started really getting into music during college, and I remember getting the train to and from college and having my little Discman. The 3 CDs that were mainly on rotation were Oasis, Definitely Maybe, of course, Tenacious D, which had songs like Tribute on, which I loved, and the CD of a local band called Livewire. And I loved that album. Nothing Out of the Ordinary, it was called.
I wanted to play songs and I wanted to get famous. That was my plan. So when I was 8 years old, I started playing guitar. I started watching John Lennon and Beatles stuff and just thought, that's going to be me, I'm going to be able to do that. I did try hard and I think we did some good songs, but things changed.
I remember I was hanging out with Neil. Neil played bass and I played guitar, barely any guitar. I was dreadful. And then I met Neil's cousin Johnny and he played this riff and it was just like 4 chords and I was really impressed. It's like the best original thing I'd ever heard. And I was like, oh, can I be in your band? Can I please be in your band? And I promised myself like I'd try as hard as I possibly could to learn guitar.
I got to know Nick through my cousin. He was a friend of his at college and knew him from school. And we were working on a project together doing some filming and some editing. That's a different documentary in itself, we won't go into that right now. Nick would come around to help me with the editing. He was always interested in choosing what audio tracks to put to our film. And he looked down on my desk and saw a CD and it said Livewire, nothing out of the ordinary. And he goes, "Ha, Paulie," as he called me. "That's my band." It blew my mind. I'd been admiring all of his guitar work on it and I'd known him for well over a year and didn't even think he was capable of that.
We used to gig pretty regularly. Neil was always good at getting gigs. Johnny was good at getting gigs. I wasn't very good at getting gigs.
Neil's input actually, without a doubt, was that he put the most work in. He's the one that organised the gigs, organised the band practices.
I was always scared of gigging. I preferred practicing because you didn't have anyone watching you.
As a younger band, Livewire were quite iconic to us and we did kind of respect Johnny Vernon as a musician.
Livewire, I know that was sort of an inspiration, I think, for them to make Chris want to play even more and get more.
They had their CD and we saw them playing at Christchurch Quay.
Yes, yeah, the Regatta Week, and so we all went down and watched, and they were good.
We'd written a load of new songs. Paul had managed to get hold of some better recording equipment.
A digital 16-track recording system, which was this big desk thing with some knobs on and some sliders.
So we decided to spend the summer holiday recording those songs, basically.
They enlisted the help of their friend who lived a road away, which was handy.
We were friends with someone on the same street called Mark Watson. He always had an interest in bass.
I'm a big Bob Dylan fan.
Yeah.
So kind of doing that, I'd want to do that kind of thing, have like a harmonica thing in.
It's that. What does that mean?
I don't know, he just goes with it.
Music is there to be listened to, whereas if you write something that everyone's heard, no one's going to listen to it. And you should try and use your music to actually say something.
It's a new takeover bid.
And it was only until we went to lay down the bass, we discovered that he couldn't play 4 consecutive notes in a row without making a mistake.
What? I know the whole bloody thing, I was playing it perfect yesterday. No one remembers the bassist anyway. I'd love to be able to continue going with the band and going with that, but ultimately I'd love to do my own solo thing. Ultimately.
As far as I know, Mark's doing it really well in his chosen field, which isn't music.
I can do this.
Paul got more interested in learning the guitar. I taught him a few chords and gave him a couple of books.
The first band I was in was actually started by myself and Adam Keffin.
Kevin was playing drums, Paul was playing guitar, and then I think Paul might have asked me to play with him.
It was about that time I kind of realised that I didn't mind doing the singing, but playing the guitar and singing, there was a lot of pressure and I'd only just picked up the guitar.
Then Paul asked Maiden to join.
Essentially, you could look at it and say, I took over their band, but that isn't true. You know, Kevin and I started a new band and just knew a limited amount of people that could play music.
Then Nick joined, so there's a 5-piece, and Nick was by far the best talented person in the band. So that led to a big famous gig at Kevin's farm in 2005.
I thought the band were very good because I was starting out in music myself and being a very much amateur and being in Blacksmith, I thought they were brilliant. It was like, wow, these guys can play.
A really good crowd, and it was like terrifying but exhilarating when we played. It was brilliant, it was great fun.
Now, Blacksmith, I'd seen video evidence of theirs. I knew that Jim was in the band.
And at the time I was kind of tinkering with playing guitar. My father played guitar and it was something I wanted to do, but probably not something I was very proficient at. And it became Blacksmith, I suppose, over the course of one event which took place at Sway Social Club, where a gentleman wearing a skirt of some kind and a stick with a skull on the end introduced himself as the lead vocalist. And I'd never met him before.
You headbutted the cymbal and dented it, We're out of order.
And I actually got fired. I think I've been fired for that band numerous times, and I don't remember what for. Sam, at some point during that, transitions to become the drummer, although he was very much a session drummer, really. I think they paid him per gig.
Lance was the type where he was quite the showman. He was more about the act, not so much about the vocal. This is quite typical, where he caused havoc on stage, be it towards the audience, a lot of the time towards himself. One time there was a few pints flying around. He'd often dance with the pint on the head, sort of like his signature move, and then the pint glass would in fact be smashed on him, and management at the back just watching, shaking their head, and they literally pulled the plug. Power went off, shouting, "Stop, stop, get off." House lights come on. It was slightly embarrassing, mainly for them, I think. I was just sat at the back, sort of shrugging, going, well, it's just a normal gig. I knew nothing else.
Originally, we used to rent out a community centre to practice in, which was an amazing facility. They had the stage floor and seating that went up. They were swiftly evicted from using that facility for whatever reason.
Just going to the girls' studio where we'll be acting quickly.
Where's that?
In here.
At the time, it didn't feel weird. It didn't feel over the top and unnecessary. I just went with it.
Band didn't last that long. We did that one gig, which was great. Nick went back to uni, and we were actually asked to play at Sam Kay's birthdays. We were one of two bands that were on. Quite a special one for me, because it was the first time I'd played in a band while I was playing guitar and singing. I had my 12-string guitar, and I took it up to the sound man and said, "This is what we're using." And he said, "How are you plugging it in?" I said, "Oh, it doesn't plug in, we can mic it up." And he just said, "No, you can't." A member of the band, who will remain nameless, said, "Oh, this is why I hate gigging with you guys! You're so underprepared, you're such idiots!" So we just nipped back to Adam's house and borrowed his brother's guitar, which was lucky that was available. And we plugged in, and I played an electric guitar just on clean, and everything was fine. But because of the animosity that existed, I think that was destined to be our last gig, unfortunately.
They practice a lot, and I usually go along, something to do, have a look.
Adam would rehearse and then sort of get up and leave.
But the practice wanted to carry on, so they'd look at me and sort of go, you know, "Do you want to get on the kit?"
Sam was sort of preparing himself for gigging these songs, you know, and he'd only just started learning the drums, probably at a similar time I started learning guitar. Too late in life, really. Should have started younger, shouldn't we?
About 6 months out from a Battle of the Bands competition.
We said to Adam, "We're hoping to do this. Are you on board?" Turns out he wasn't on board. Said, "No, sorry guys, I'm out. I don't fancy doing the gigs." And Sam was at the bar and came over and sat down, and the meeting continued.
Sam Kay took on the mantle of drumming.
The rest is musical history.
That became Jasper Trapp.
Every bill was the same, wasn't it? It was Jasper Trapp and Fever Dog.
Fever Dog was formed at the same time as Jasper Trapp, so we were sort of rivals.
Our first gig as the actual lineup of Jasper Trapp was a Battle of the Bands.
They got through. We didn't. Not bitter. They deserved it. They sounded a lot better than us.
We ended up playing a lot of gigs, actually. Quite a lot of the Rydal, Wheat Sheaf, all the New Milton big guns. Just the Rydal and the Wheat Sheaf, really.
We then met Gareth, who set up quite a few local shows in the area.
Tell me a band that does indie, and it's the vocals. The vocals, oh my God, mate, they're brilliant.
We went out as a covers band, really, because that's what you get paid to do, but we did sneak in loads of originals. I don't know how we got away with it.
So my brother asked us to play at his wedding, and as a thank you for that, he gave us some vouchers to record at a recording studio in Totton.
We want something with a bit more drive on this one.
Yeah. Did you say you wanted one for tea, please? Yeah.
So now,
Carol.
Can I have a coffee as well?
Yeah. Just one firm push. Not a tap, but don't hold it in. It goes into landing mode.
Because we'd never really done anything that official recording-wise. So it was a good learning experience, having some solid studio time for a few days.
It was pretty cool to be in a proper recording booth. And realising that most of my harmonies didn't really work.
Can you sing that on your own a sec? Just let me hear that. Please. Right, when you hit that nah, that top note, you're shaping your throat as if you're going nah, like that. Nah!
It was an experience.
I think possibly the acoustic might work then.
It's main on in there, see what he thinks.
Do you think you should palm mute?
For what?
On the... I did this with you in mind, but...
Why wouldn't he?
Chris and Chris wrote quite a lot of material, and I was keen to push Jasper Trap as an original outfit.
Is in that kind of acoustic-driven indie rock ilk, you know, that kind of songwriting.
Had a little EP from it. It was on iTunes. Push that about.
We were, in fact, actually awarded Artist of the Month on Forest FM.
These are my studio guests tonight. Now, our Breakthrough Artist of the Month for April. These are Jasper Trap.
Where does the name Jasper Trap actually come from then, guys?
Why are you looking at me? Jasper is a wasp, obviously.
Yes.
Jasper Trap. Trapping a wasp.
Wasn't my idea, but it was a name.
We said we'd never tell anyone what it was.
And now we've said it on the
But
radio.
we said it to
Nobody told me that. I wasn't aware I wasn't supposed to tell people.
The award itself was presented to us by Alan Dorey.
Well done, guys, for being our Breakthrough Artist of the Month for April. We usually like to say a little bit about what Breakthrough is and what it means. We're a community radio station, and we really do like to try and encourage local artists, local bands in plying their trade, as it were.
It was a great thing for lots of bands, and it really helped them and showcased their music.
But it's also providing live music for local listeners and trying to do a little bit more than perhaps other radio stations might be able to do.
He has since passed away, sadly, but he'll always be remembered by all the people in the community for all that good work. There's been so many musical influences over the years, but one of the bands I'm most fond of is Travis. We'd booked tickets to go see them.
They were gigging in sort of smaller venues. They had an album out, and the nearest one to us was Bath.
And I knew how to get to Bath because my cousin went to university there. So I said to him, save your ink, mate, just print out the last page.
Printed it, just one sheet. Got to Bath. Paul was like, where's the map? There's the map. Bath, to Bath Pavilion.
Bath, it's a Bath Pavilion. The problem was, I didn't know where Bath, as what Google Map would have called it, started. It took us 4 hours to find our way around Bath.
Parking, getting out of the car, asking the locals, where is it? Where's this venue? And it was a nice interaction we had with the locals. And
it was a brilliant gig. It was well worth the 7-hour car journey.
So we waited about half an hour outside the back, and they eventually came out one by one, and they were lovely guys. So then eventually, after a little small talk, Paul delved into his pocket. Luckily a CD come out, and it was the Jasper Trap one, and he sort of sold it to him as a, you know, we're in a band as well, and they were very polite about it. You know, they took it away. Whether they listened to it or not, I don't know, but they took it.
I don't know if I actually put a number or a name on it, which might... Anyway, it was nice of them to humour me. So I worked in the pub with a gentleman called Lee Maycock who could play the piano, and he was just absolutely excellent. I was in awe of his playing, he was brilliant.
I was just a kid, and my mum made me have some piano lessons when I was about 10. I wasn't that struck on the idea to start with, but it got me out of other lessons. Then started playing with some friends in a band, doing 70 gigs a year when we were about 14, 15. When I look back now, that was a really good grounding for just getting used to playing in front of people.
In Jasper, we were always keen to push new material, and an opportunity came up to record a full album at Southampton Solent University for free in their studios. So our friend Lee Maycock, who played keys, we got him involved and he played on pretty much all of the tracks. From that recording experience and getting Lee involved, we eventually sort of roped him into playing gigs. And that was really good actually, because he'd always add a lot at a live gig. So after those fantastic gigs we'd done, and Lee playing with Paul more, they both had an opportunity to go out abroad to play live in the hotels of Ibiza.
Cool! Racing! Lodge!
I fancied going somewhere hot for 6 months to get paid. We learnt 4 songs, went to an audition, got the job, panicked, thought we better learn at least another 4. It turns out we needed about 400.
I remember before going having a little bit of a breakdown that I didn't even know the melody or the words to Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. And it was that realisation that made me sort of panic about the whole thing.
Learned on the job, didn't see the sun for the first 3 weeks because we were inside rehearsing, playing, learning, rehearsing, playing, learning. How well do I remember the first night? I remember the utter panic of not being able to get the gear out of the cases because we didn't have the keys.
We arrived in the day, someone had picked us up and we'd been driven halfway across the island to our place of residence in a little village called Escanal. We chucked our suitcases in, we were encouraged to grab all our instruments and go on to the hotel. You know, I might as well have been blindfolded, I didn't know where we were going. We got to the first hotel in Calilonga and Lee and I go to open up our cases. It was a special flight case for the guitar. Keys were back in my backpack, which was at the flat.
I drove back not having a clue where I was going.
Lee drove from the hotel back to Escanal. I told him that it was a little plastic bag inside my backpack. Somehow he managed to do it in like 40 minutes. Unbelievable. Didn't get lost.
And I brought the wrong key back, didn't I?
I just couldn't believe it. I was almost sobbing as I was bending the metal to slip the guitar out of a locked case.
So, moving on to the second night from the epic first night that we had.
There was this amazing comedian called George Pena.
You can't become rich singing opera unless you're fat and ugly, and I couldn't make them down.
He had the crowd in the palm of his hand. Yeah! And we had to go on after him to see the night through.
The longer he kept going, the more nervous Paul got.
Luckily for us though, he overrun massively and went on for an extra hour, so we didn't have to go on.
Calming down a little bit, starting to get a little more settled after the first 48 hours.
But at night it's a different world. Go out and find the girl. Come on, we dance.
So when Paul was in Ibiza, we did absolutely nothing. I think we had one practice because he asked us to many times to do a practice. We didn't play any of our songs. It was absolute rubbish. Really, we just lied to him in the end, just to keep him happy.
Learned songs, did the gig, went out on the piss. Learned songs, did the gig, went out on the piss. Learned songs, got a McDonald's, did the gig, whatever, went out on the... You can see the pattern. Great times.
6 and 2 is 8. Come on, baby, don't you
I think for him that was a time where he learnt a hell of a lot of songs and probably got a lot better, which ultimately ended up with us all getting better. Dragged us up from the mire.
So when Paul got back from Ibiza, I was in New Zealand, and I think apparently my brother filled in. I wasn't there obviously, but he did a few gigs in my absence.
I'm the drummer for the rock band Western Sand, former Coke Can Jack percussionist, former temporary Jasper Trap drummer, and Sam's little brother. I first knew that I wanted to be a drummer when I was 4 years old. I had a VHS of the Sooty Show, Sooty and Sweep having a little drum battle. And then Sue comes in, she goes, "What's all this
banging and crashing about, Matthew?"
Well, it's Sooty and Sweep, they've got their drum kits, they're going to enter them for the talent show.
He picks up the phone and goes, "I'll tell you what, I'll call a friend of mine. He's a drummer And he'll show you what the meaning of the word drummer really is. Cuts to their front room, and there's Nico McBrain, the drummer of Iron Maiden. And I was watching that at 4 years old, with my jaw on the floor. Our singer Tyler, I've known since we were about 13, and we were in a band together in our teen years. We went our separate ways for a bit. We played in different bands. And then I got a call from Tyler saying, oh, I met this guy called Jimmy at work who's a guitarist. We want to start a band. Do you want to be the drummer? Yeah, all right.
Hey, mister, I've been searching for a long time. I ain't preaching for a lifeline, but I got my back against the wall.
That was the beginning of what became Western Sound. I think that was probably only the second or third time we'd ever played acoustically. It was at the W.A.R in Bournemouth. Don't look for it, it's not there anymore.
I was blown away by it. Certain things you wouldn't know shone through more acoustically.
Apparently this is a new thing, eh? I can actually hear it as well. I mean, it's just incredible. It's in the wrong tuning though. We're in D, I think that's in E. I might be wrong, I'm not sure. I keep on walking down this track.
Late 2009, that Sam buggered off to New Zealand, and that left Jasper Trap without a drummer, and so they very kindly asked me.
Thank you very much. Nathan. Right, we're going to come clean. Our normal drummer is not very well. That's a lie.
Good 6-month stint with Jasper Trap, which was fantastic. I got paid more in that 6 months being Jasper Trap than in the 11 years of Western Sound.
We got really good, really tight, and then Sam got back. So we had to say goodbye to Nathan and let Sam reprise his role as the drummer in this band. But that wasn't the only time that Nathan joined us. There was, in fact, a gig that Chris couldn't make. So Sam Kay stepped up and said, oh, I'll play the bass, and Nathan could play the drums.
There was one song where I'd completely forgotten every chord. And I just looked at the amp, shrugged my shoulders as if it was broken.
For you, I bleed myself.
All the bands that you're part of teaches you something, and I was kind of trying to find something that I wanted to do. I was very much inspired by my father, who was an acoustic guitarist, so kind of the rocky sound didn't really suit me. And I formed a band with Sam. That came about from a music festival we went to in North Devon called Gold Coast Festival. Sam had driven us all the way to Devon.
Is out of water.
First thing we did, we jumped out the car, unfolded a couple of deck chairs, and instead of setting our tent up, we smashed through a crate of San Miguel or Desperados or something, and then were incapacitated and unable to set up our tent. Sam and I had already been jamming a little bit by then, and that's where Coke Can Jack formed, and it formed with, from memory, Sam Kay's inability to ask for a Jack Daniels and Coke that came out Coke Can Jack, and that was, and that stuck.
That's the name of the band, that's it. Well, it was Sam actually who came to me. He said, do you know what a cajon is? Isn't that one of those wooden boxes that you sit on and you just hit? Yeah. Jim's bought one. Do you want to play it? Or do you reckon you could play it? Yeah, I'll give it a go.
And Coke Can Jack was my first real, something that drove me into really enjoying music and playing music. And we did an awful lot for what was essentially a 3-piece. We became a 4-piece because Chris Maynard joined us on bass.
It was good fun to have 2 bands going at the same time that were completely different in their styles and their ways of practicing and performing.
It just became more and more polished, and the songs shone. They were also really good fun to go see.
But there's incidents of Nathan Kay falling off his cajon halfway through our first ever gig,
I had a few beers.
taking out half the stage at Chaplin's.
Jim always used to over-exaggerate the story. He came off the back, his legs went up in the air like this.
And unplugging me and Sam on the way down.
He unplugged me on the way down. I don't think it was that bad.
We all grew up with music around in the same area at the same time.
There's always been talented people around here playing in good bands, and there's always been something to go and watch, and listen to. And I think we're pretty lucky, really, to have grown up in this area, knowing these people, playing with these people, getting to go and watch them, getting to go and listen. It's just nice to have.
All we need is just a little patience.
There was this guy come over from Lithuania, Victor, wasn't there, to work for the summer. He's a crazy cat.
I came to New Milton, and I came to the bar, and I go, I'm looking for a John. He says, all right. And I say, I come here because on an ad that I seen on New Milton. And they go, what makes you think that it's our ad? And by then they started laughing. They hired me because I felt I was so silly but so sincere, I was all mixed up.
3, 2, 1, bungee!
Bungee jump day was amazing. It was really great weather, and it was my first time doing bungee.
Victor's a killer guitarist, man. He's amazing.
I jammed with him a bit and we did a few open mics and gigs.
Rydell was one of the best experiences. I met amazing people.
I learned a lot from Victor, actually, about certain ways of playing, the way to pick chords. Just watching him, he was excellent. We had a little outfit that we called the Midnight Nippers. What it was one of the bands cancelled last minute on a Sunday night, and since we both worked in the pub, we took the gig. And really, we had about 3 songs, and we just made them last an hour.
Paul and Victor recorded some of their gigs, I think, at the Rydell, and this was back in the day where YouTube was very new. So Paul uploaded their version of Chili Pepper's song, Other Side, and I think they got thousands of hits. We would meet up and jam in the band room, and he'd play electric guitar, and he was great on that, obviously, and he played some of Jasper Trap songs he'd learnt. Great guy.
Go something like this.
So when Livewire disbanded, I went off to university, and then we ended up forming a band called the Bootleg Lilos.
It's amazing what can happen when you're drunk and say yes. Look at what happened to the drunken sailors.
We played to some really big crowds. We played at a couple of festivals in Scotland and played all over London, some really big venues. It was nice to be the lead guy for a bit. As it turns out, it's not for me. I don't really like attention. I eventually found my way into playing bass, and that kind of suits me down to the ground. Stand at the back, just do a little bit of this. No one sees you, but you're part of it.
So in 2011, I was offered the opportunity to go and play abroad again, this time in Gran Canaria in one hotel, so more songs had to be learned.
I got chatting to Paulie one night, and he basically said, do you want to come over and play bass for me?
We can try to understand the New York Times effect on man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a...
We just played covers every night in the hotel. It was awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I went to Gran Canaria for a week as a cheap holiday to see Paul.
Do you think that stay? Would use a bit of duct tape? As long as you don't drive like...
Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here.
I helped out with the technical side of things, sort of turned into a bit of a week's work, but it was good fun, had a good time.
And I say, it's alright.
We then thought we could be an act when we get home.
They enlisted me and Vijay to form a band.
I started playing
bass many, many years ago when I was about 12 or 13. I think the first song I ever learnt was FBI by The Shadows. Just carried on from there, really, through lots of different bands over the years. A lot of gigs around Surrey. We had a residency at Hatchett's in Piccadilly, which was a really good nightclub. We had a residency at Playboy Club in Park Lane too. Best gig ever. It was hard work, actually. You were on all night from 8:30 till about 2 in the morning, but you were on for half an hour, off for half an hour, on for half an hour, off for half an hour. But the half an hour off was great fun because you used to be in a common room with all the bunnies. That band developed, and through change of personnel became Offspring. Through a little bit of hard work and the right connections, we got a recording contract with RCA Victor. And they asked us to put a single together, which we did, which was called Windfall. Our manager at the time was working at London Weekend Television, and he managed to get us onto a TV programme called 2Gs and the Pop People. And each week they had a new group on, and we were the new group for that week. Windfall was our first release, which unfortunately didn't do too well, got a few plays. I was working with Paul. We were both working at a production company together, and he knew I played in another band.
He was talking about music, and so was I, and I said, we should have a little jam and play together. And we formed something called the Johnny Beats Band.
One of the hardest things about being in a band is naming the band and coming up with a name that doesn't sound absolutely ridiculous.
Paul came up with the idea of calling us the Forsyths.
Like the Four Tops, you know, and there's four of us.
And it actually was based on Bruce.
Nick wanted it to be called Johnny Beats and the Bumfluff Band. I don't know if that was an insult to me and my facial hair, but I vetoed that and said Johnny Beats Band is fine. We went out and we did some gigs at local pubs and played at family dues. And that was sort of running at the same time as Jasper Trap ending.
We made a lot of mistakes generally when we played. Probably the commitment from some members was lacking.
Shame, because we had all these songs written and I always felt like it was going somewhere, but it had become stagnant.
I recall having walking around my kitchen having a four-way phone conversation, basically agreeing that we should call it a day.
I was quite sad when Jasper Trap finished.
Many years we'd been gigging, so it was quite a sad moment. I'd taken a bit of a break from drumming, and that was kind of my first gig back, was the Johnny Beats Band. We did a lot of practice, we needed it, and especially me.
I switched over to lead guitar at that point.
Nick is a good guitarist. Well, he certainly was when he was 15. I had a little bit of a rivalry, I suppose, who could play the best bits, and nine times out of 10 it was him.
It worked very well until Nick was dragged off down to Brighton and had to leave the band.
The three of us were still very keen to be a band and perform. We all gelled well. Vijay's bass playing was great and Sam was getting better on the drums, so it felt a shame to not carry on.
After Jasper Trap, I took a couple of years off I wasn't really doing any music. But then I started to write a few songs on my own, just for my own enjoyment.
Chris reached out to me and said, would you like to start a duo? And I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and we just started learning some more songs again, learning some more covers.
We were writing together, which we didn't usually do in the old band. We kept doing open mics and writing new material, and it felt like something quite special was happening.
Chris was going through a bit of a bad patch at the time. With that comes some creativity we find in life. A lot of good songs are written from the bad times.
The songwriting went up a notch. Chris wrote some really good ones when he was in a difficult place.
I think he was writing from his heart, wasn't he? He was,
Yeah.
you know, he was putting how he felt into words, and you can tell.
Paul was quite keen to get in a full band again, and I can't remember why, but I was absolutely dead set against it. I guess because my fingers had been burned. I felt like my fingers were burnt. I don't know why. Nothing happened. It was fine. Basically, I was probably because I was lazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for the awesome Chris and Paul.
It's a no-brainer for me, and Chris stuck his heels in and said, nope, nope.
We gradually moved towards, Sam's just going to come along with practice, just play a bit of bass. No reason, he's just coming for fun. We're just going to practice some drums, just see what happens. Oh, we're in a full band now, are we? Okay, yeah.
We are going to do a gig, or at least a few gigs, as a full band. At least a few.
When I'm cleaning windows.
I somehow tricked him into it, and then he slowly realised, that it's even easier to play in a band. You can mess up all you like, and the bass and the drums cover it. So We.A.R. Robot, the band, was born. So we're off to go and first time rehearse as a band.
Paul persuaded Chris to come for rehearsal. I'll be honest, I wasn't so sure at the time, because I was so used to Nick's voice working with Paul's, that Chris's sounded just different. I wasn't sure where it was going to go, because I didn't know if Chris was confident enough or if he wanted to be in the band. But yeah, it just suddenly blossomed, didn't it?
You know, as a duo, there's only 2 of you. Band, 4, 5.
Our first and second gig, we were joined by Chris's cousin Kim on the piano, who was fantastic.
The grass is always greener on the other side. Maiden's got a new guy that you wanna try. When time is running out, you wanna stay alive.
Some of the original songs were recorded at my dad's workplace. Now, I thought they were just rough tracks. Turns out they were going to be used on the final version. We got Kim involved, she laid down some keys and piano and stuff. It actually turned out pretty good.
And I'm not saying I love you, and I'm not trying to be with you, but what I am.
And the first album was Ghostbusters.
No, it was called Ghostbusters.
So that was the film, Ghostbusters. Our first album was Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
We pushed all the originals and went on local radio shows.
Here we are, we're at Hope FM. We're going to be talking about our album, and we're going to be playing some songs on the
It's quite a scary thing, you know, you put your music out there that you've worked on and you're not sure if it's as good as other songs out there, and maybe we should have pushed it a bit more. And is there still time? Probably not.
No.
No, it's gone, isn't it?
Oh, I just love that song.
I love all the original stuff.
I suppose it's a shame because people go to a pub gig or whatever, they want to hear songs that they know. I know you do chuck the odd one in, or 2 or 3, but it's, yeah, some of your songs are lovely.
Never mind the original stuff, mate. The covers does it, but the original stuff is so fantastic, Sam, you know? It really is. It's so fantastic. The thing is, it's catchy vocals. These guys have got real indie vocals. I mean, I'm not just talking about Paul. I'm talking about also, you know,
like in all the other projects we've done, we wanted to really push the originals. Cellar Bar, they're great for original music. There was one in particular in Bournemouth where I think Paul knew that he couldn't make it.
Promised me he'd be there.
So me, Chris and Vijay turned up to the venue, sound checked without Paul. Chris was a little bit like, looking at his watch, tutting.
And he didn't make it, so I had to play on my own. Well, not on my own, Vijay and Sam were there, but lead guitar and singing in front of some quite talented musicians, actually. It was mortifying.
We wanted to push the original stuff, and we wanted to push Chris a bit more as a frontman.
We're about the harmonies, and I was playing it on my own, trying to do half do my vocal lines, half do Paul's.
He actually did a bloody good job.
W.A.R. Robot had a gig at the world famous New Milton bandstand for a charity gig. I played bass on because of Vijay. Vijay couldn't do it, presumably because we weren't getting paid. I remember I was quite ill that day. I think I'd been ill for a few days, had the severe trots.
But he pulled through without following through.
We've probably got 27 original songs. Our second album was called Take a Waltz on the Wild Side. I just came up with the idea as a laugh, and it stuck. Ralph seemingly had this tendency to write songs in a 3/4 waltz.
For a while, Paul lived in my house, and during that time, we wrote and recorded 2 albums.
My idea for the cover art for the second album was a bit of a abstract, bizarre idea, but I pitched it to Paul. Me on a drum kit, but it was like a drum kit car driving down the road. He then took that to Sue, Chris's mum, and she did this great pencil freehand drawing of that concept, and that became the artwork.
The songs are incredible. The arrangements and the standard of musicianship and vocal arrangements within the songs is exceptional. My company, Hangover Hill Limited, amongst the recording studio, we also put on live events. My PA, Mel, and I worked very hard to do a monthly event at a very prestigious venue called The Lighthouse in Poole.
To be able to play your original music in an intimate setting to an audience that's captive is a privilege. We could talk about why certain songs are written. Some of them came from Chris's pain.
Do you want to mention the divorce, or shall I?
Won't talk about it.
It's fine now. He's got a lovely family.
It's all fine.
Yeah,
it's all fine.
cool. We can joke about it now.
And people connect more with the music when they kind of know that.
Let me be the one you want me to. Give you all of my love and truth.
And then to be able to invite them to a proper stage with a proper audience that pays proper money for proper tickets to go and see them, and then listens to what they're doing and really enjoys it. The event has grown and grown and grown after the last 2 or 3 years, and there's no sign of it stopping yet.
I sadly lost my mother through cancer a number of years ago, and my auntie, she did a fantastic amount of fundraising for cancer charities and cancer research, and that kind of culminated in this single.
She came up with an idea of changing the words to Reason to Believe, the beautiful song by Rod Stewart.
Still I look to find a reason to believe.
Sue got the rights from Rod himself. He gave the Rod thumbs up for it being used.
Paul Denson really produced the record. It was absolutely incredible how he pulled it together, and many other musicians were involved.
We got TV's Cy Gennaro on it. We got Matt Black doing the piano.
At the time I was teaching Molly, so I got to help a little with preparing her voice and how she wanted to deliver the song. She is a great vocalist, she really is. She's really blossomed into her voice.
And she did a launch party at Canvas in Bournemouth. Everybody that played on the single came up and played, and an incarnation of W.A.R. Robot headlined that.
I sang some songs with my duo, and I think I even got on stage with W.A.R. Robot.
I did a set with the back line of my band now, Barefoot Soul. It was about my mother and about Sue's fundraising, so I thought it'd be really nice for Dad to front a band rather than just do a set on his own. It's a really fond memory, actually, of the times that Dad and I played together, and that captures it really well.
My brother and I have an acoustic duo called Tunebox. We wanted to offer a band format, so obviously we asked the most talented people we know, and we asked Paul and Sam if they would like to be part of making Tunebox a four-piece.
All of the stars are fading away. Just try not to.
I feel very lucky that I've had the chance to share so many gigs with Paul. We have an easy work dynamic. We're very comfortable with each other. I mean, music never really feels like work, but when I know that I have a gig in the diary with Paul, I know it's just going to be fun. When I think back to all the gigs we have done, it's usually just full of laughter and pizza. We love when we get given free food. Working with Paul and We Are Robot pushed me to up my game because I'm very guilty of when something is comfortable, I don't branch out of that.
I love you when you're singing that song, and I get a lump in my throat 'cause you're gonna sing the words wrong.
Working with Paul and the guys, it forced me to be more conscientious, to concentrate in a musical setting, because if you don't know it, you're letting everyone else down. It was a good learning experience for me working with new people.
Paul, Sam, and a chap called Sean are the backing band for a singer-songwriter called Emma Hardy.
I know it sounds big-headed, maybe I am wrong. I guess we'll have to wait and see just what I have done.
It was really nice just to have the whole band come in and go, we think this could work, we think this could be better, and just really sort of elevate the songs to a level that made them sound really professional, really good. And the Live and Unheard gig, it was one of the best gigs I've ever done.
This is the Emma Hardy Band. Take a chance in the wildlife. You never know if you don't try.
We are so proud to be part of it. Live and Unheard at the Lighthouse in Poole.
I would love to continue working with Paul, with Sam, because they're just incredible at what they do, and it's such an honour for me to be able to work with people as good as them.
Sam and Paul played on my album and I was really happy with the outcome. I performed a few songs of mine with We.A.R. Robot for my birthday party a couple of years ago, and they're a great live band and it was really fun to have them play my songs.
So I stand my ground. I'm ready to face this now. Please come back to me when we find.
Check my album out. It's available on iTunes and Spotify.
Oh, gigs, eh? One of the highlights for me was Rock to Rock, Let's Rock in Cornwall. That was amazing.
It was Paul's idea to mash our bands together. We created We Are Coke Can Trap. We did a We Are Robot track, Beatles track. It was Saw Us Standing There. We did a Jasper Trap song.
I don't care. We're never there. When I think about it, it all falls down.
I'm in a Coke Can Jack song, just as a bit of reminiscing.
Can't you see that I'm colorblind? I got a one-way ticket on a two-way ride. 'Cause I know you're seeing through my smile, but my soul's as empty as my blood.
I'll never, ever, ever stop writing songs, and I'll never, ever stop playing guitar. Certainly what we're doing here today is just reminiscing and nothing but happy memories, really. So that's great. And anything else that we may do would be for a fun point of view for me.
She stands and stares at me. I feel she's failed. She stands tall. She feels.
It's great to be in an environment where you're all creating something, and it's even greater to be in an environment where someone asks you to be part of something because they believe that you can add something to it.
We.A.R. Robot are one of the best bands I've had. Whenever I get asked for a recommendation for a band, they are the first that I will put forward.
It's the vocals. Oh my God, mate, they're brilliant. You know, it's brilliant. This is indie pop, this is indie rock, it's fantastic.
It'll be easy for me to just say they're amazing, and their music is incredible. The musicianship is high. It would be really easy for me to just say that, but I have to say what's really on my mind. They're amazing.
The thing is, nowadays, when we hear you doing a cover, then you hear the original. We always say, I prefer We.A.R. Robots. I don't like their one. Don't like Yellow by Coldplay.
You wouldn't be able to tell that they're not sort of a professional, really famous band because they just work so well together.
So we would like to say a big thank you, really, to everyone that's supported us over the years. You know, without the fans, what we do would be pretty dull. I'm driving the car to the gig and the boys are thumbing me up.
I lost my heart to a lady gypsy so long ago. I forget her name, but I still remember the smell of the flowers and the way my life would never be the same. It's my battle! It's my battle! Danger! I want it!
It's produced by an American singer called Donnie Elbert. He taught me a lot about bass. He re-recorded a couple of his own tracks. And I played bass on both of those. And both of those made the charts here and in the States.
So many jokes, so many sneers, and all those oh so nears weigh you down through the years. I can't get enough of your love. I can't get enough of your love. Somebody say we will find you brighter day.
He likes to fly high in the sky. He's a flying boy. He likes to fly.
Come now, sing with me, Papa Grimbo. I'll take you for a drink with me, Papa Grimbo. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Joking on your alibis, but it's just the price I pay. Destiny is calling me. It's on the road to empty walk winding. It's all the lights that light the way you're blinding.
I'd like to be a manager, but I can't manage anything.